Picture a lawn in southwest London, the middle of July, and a 21-year-old from Quezon City stepping onto it with a country's attention slowly turning her way without anyone quite realizing it yet. Nobody expected this. Not really. Because for as long as anyone can remember, the Philippines has poured its sporting soul into boxing rings and basketball courts, never into anything resembling a grass court in England, and yet here was Alex, about to turn that entire assumption on its head over the course of 2 unforgettable weeks. Before a single point had been played, she had already made history simply by being seeded 29th, the first Filipino man or woman ever to hold a seed at a Grand Slam, a fact that on its own would have been enough to fill headlines back home for days. But that turned out to be nothing more than a footnote to what was coming. She arrived in London riding the best stretch of tennis of her life, having lifted a title in Birmingham and then torn through the draw in Berlin, toppling 2 top 10 opponents back-to-back on her way to the semifinals. The kind of form that doesn't happen by accident and doesn't fade the moment the lights get brighter. Round 1 gave her a chance to settle in, and she did exactly that, cruising past her Mexican opponent with barely a hiccup, banking a payday that would make most people's jaws drop for a single afternoon on court. Round 2, though, tested something different. Against her Australian opponent, Alex found herself down a set and staring at the kind of moment that ends so many promising Grand Slam debuts, the point where the story quietly fizzles and everyone moves on to the next name. Instead, she did something remarkable. She simply stopped letting her opponent breathe, ripping off 12 games in a row, turning a shaky start into a statement, and walking off the court having silenced any doubt before it could even take shape. And then came the match that changed everything. Round 3, center court, and across the net stood the defending champion, a 6-time Grand Slam winner who 12 months earlier had won this exact tournament without dropping a single game in the final, a feat only one other player in the Open era had ever managed. On paper, this wasn't supposed to be competitive. In reality, it became a war that lasted well over 2 hours, a match where the opening set alone stretched toward 90 minutes and needed a tiebreak just to be decided, Alex clawing her way through break point after break point before finally sealing it. Her opponent broke back early in the second, found a sliver of daylight, and looked like she might steady the ship, and Alex answered immediately, breaking straight back before surging ahead and refusing to let the door open again. When the final point landed, she sank to her knees on the grass, and the tears came instantly, unguarded, because she had just done something no one from her country had ever come close to doing. She had beaten a defending Wimbledon champion on the very court where that champion had been crowned queen a year earlier. What happened next, at the microphone, is the part that traveled even further than the scoreline. Still catching her breath, still shaking from adrenaline, she started talking about the players she had grown up admiring, admitting that what she had just done might look small compared to the careers some legends of the sport had built over decades, but that for a girl from the Philippines, it meant something entirely different. Her voice cracked. She couldn't finish the sentence. When she found the words again, she talked about training every afternoon after school with her brother and her grandfather, describing the child she used to be as a kid in mismatched socks and worn-out shoes with round cheeks, and she said that image of who she used to be was everything to her in that moment. There was nothing rehearsed about it. No campaign behind it. Just a young woman who had spent years grinding through junior tournaments and lower-tier events, suddenly standing on the most famous court in tennis, connecting who she used to be with who she had just become in real time, and a country that had never had a tennis star to call its own felt that moment ripple through every group chat and every living room within minutes. Her grandfather, by her own telling in past interviews, was never some elite tactician pulling strings from behind the scenes. He was a club-level player who simply loved the sport, who studied it obsessively, who used those after-school sessions to build a bond and a routine, quietly planting the kind of discipline that never shows up on a stat sheet but shows up in everything else, in how a player responds when a match starts slipping away. She has said that every time she reaches a milestone in her career, she thinks of him, of everything he sacrificed to get her here. That emotional core sat underneath everything that followed, but the tournament didn't pause to let the moment breathe. 2 days later, she was back out on court, this time against a former Wimbledon finalist from Italy with a game built specifically for grass, a dangerous, well-prepared opponent who knew exactly how to slow Alex down. And here the story deserves the honest ending rather than the easy one, because Alex fought through every inch of that match, took it the distance, and still came up short in 3 sets. The run was over, 1 match away from the quarterfinals. But losing that match didn't erase anything that came before it, because simply by reaching the 4th round, Alex had already become the first player from the Philippines, man or woman, to reach the 2nd week of a Grand Slam, and the financial reward for getting there was locked in the moment she stepped onto that court, stacking on top of everything from the rounds before it to make this tournament the single largest payday of her career by a significant distance. It came bundled with something just as valuable too, a jump in the rankings that pushed her to a new career high in the low 30s in the world, meaning she walked out of this tournament ranked higher than when she walked in, despite the loss, because the run itself carried that much weight. Afterward, when asked how she was holding up physically and mentally after such an intense stretch, she talked about needing to enjoy the process even when it feels like a roller coaster, even through the rough patches, and she called that enjoyment her superpower, a phrase that tells you a lot about how she operates, because so many players chase results and burn out chasing them, while she seems locked into the daily work itself, independent of whatever the scoreboard says on any given day. And none of this actually came out of nowhere if you zoom out far enough. Back in 2022, she won the US Open Junior Girls title, the kind of result that turns heads inside the sport but rarely registers with the wider public. Then in 2025, she broke through at the Miami Open, reaching the semifinals as a wild card and beating 2 top 10 players along the way, becoming the first Filipino to go that deep at an event of that size and the first to crack the top 100 in the world. She followed that with a run to her first tour-level final in Eastbourne, then claimed her first WTA 125 title in Guadalajara, closing that season with a career-high ranking around 50th in the world. There were injuries along the way too. A shoulder issue that disrupted part of her hard-court season, losses that never made a single headline, and the unglamorous grind of week after week on tour with no cameras paying attention. All of that groundwork is exactly what made this Wimbledon possible. It wasn't a lightning strike out of a clear sky. It was years of compounding effort, the same discipline her grandfather instilled in her after school as a child. Part of what makes her so compelling to follow is the sacrifice underneath all of it, because she left home at just 13 years old to train at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca, spending her entire adolescence away from her family and away from the Philippines, chasing something most people in her exact position would have quietly been told was unrealistic, building a career out of a country with almost none of the professional infrastructure that players from Spain or France or the United States simply take for granted. And there's something worth noting in how she talks about her own success publicly, because when asked what she hopes young girls take from her story, she gently pushed back on the idea that they should grow up wanting to become the next her. She said it would be an honor to inspire people, but that she doesn't want kids growing up wanting to be the next Alex. She wants them to become the first version of themselves, which is a remarkably mature way to think about legacy from someone only 21 and still in the early chapters of her own career. That path, by her own description, isn't paved with trophies and viral clips, it's paved with the parts nobody sees, the early mornings, the sore shoulders, the missed celebrations, and she's been direct about crediting a broader Filipino work ethic for that mentality, a statement that lands very differently coming from someone who has actually backed it up on the sport's biggest stage. So where does this leave her going forward? She sits at a new career-high ranking in the low 30s. She's proven she can beat top 3 players on the biggest courts in the sport. She's proven she can absorb the full emotional and physical weight of a deep Grand Slam run without cracking. And she's still only 21, which in tennis terms almost certainly means this Wimbledon was a floor rather than a ceiling. There's a cultural weight to all of this that deserves naming directly too, because the Philippines has produced global stars before, most famously in boxing, but tennis has never had a figure like this. Someone who can walk into the sport's most prestigious event, beat a defending champion on center court, and turn an entire nation's attention toward a sport it barely paid attention to before. You could watch that ripple happen in real time, public figures back home calling for more investment in grassroots tennis, fans who admit they know nothing about the sport suddenly glued to her next match. And that kind of cultural gravity doesn't get manufactured by any marketing department, it gets earned point by point on the actual court. And maybe that's the most honest way to end this story, not with the prize money, staggering as it is for a young athlete from a country where tennis infrastructure has historically been thin, and not even with the history-making seeding or the fourth-round breakthrough, but with the image of her on her knees on center court in tears, trying to explain to the entire world what it meant for a kid who trained after school in worn-out shoes to grow up and beat a six-time Grand Slam champion on the exact lawn where that champion had been crowned queen the year before. That's the part that doesn't fade once the ranking points get recalculated or the money gets deposited into an account. That's the part a new generation of kids across the Philippines will grow up hearing about, the day a girl from Quezon City knelt down on the most famous grass in tennis and told an entire country that every early morning and every missed birthday and every sacrifice had meant something. And then 2 days later, she picked herself back up, absorbed a tough 3-set loss to a sharp, well-prepared opponent, and almost immediately started talking about getting back to work. Because if this run has proven anything about who Alex really is, it's that she was never chasing one tournament, she's building a career, and by every indication available right now, she's nowhere near finished.